Hey there guys, and welcome to my Nimvagus Elemental combo, or as I like to call it, Elemental Shotgun deck tech. This will be the primer that you guys can use, a video primer for everything that you want to know about Elemental combo. To start off here, I have the original deck list by Gary T that was used in, I believe, Star City Black in Pro Tour Valencia, in order to show you what it originally was and how I've changed it, hopefully for the better, and how some other people have been evolving it over the past year or two. You first off start off with these Flamekin Harbingers, which are incredibly weak by themselves, but when they find things like Kiln Fiend or Nimvagus Elemental, they become much stronger. Now, to clarify this, in case this is the first time you're actually seeing this deck in its functionality, Kiln Fiend, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, he gains 3+0 till end of turn, making him 4 if you just cast like a single spell. Makes him a 4/2. If you cast 3 spells, that gives him +3, so it gives him +9, so he becomes a 10/2, which can be huge for one good swing. And Nimvagus Elemental is a lot like him, but a little bit different. You exile instant or sorcery spells off the stack. That means they're not going to resolve. That means they're getting eaten while they're still on the stack prior to resolving. But it does mean that they are completely immune to counter spells. For what it's worth, Kiln Fiend also immune to counter spells because it's on cast, not actually on resolve. So Nimvagus Elemental eats that and can then get 2 1+1 counters, and that's permanent. So unlike Kiln Fiend, who does get bigger, Nimvagus Elemental just continues to use that. So if you were to throw 5 spells at him and he were to eat the 5 spells, he would become a 10/11. And I believe 10/11, right? 10/11, 10/12, something like that. He becomes a 11/12. There we go. And if he retains that, so you can win in 2 strikes rather than just having to wait for a combo out to win. Now, it's worth noting that he's got pretty much nothing but free spells in the deck. He's got Apostle's Blessing, which is an amazing way to get protection from a color, as well as be able to Alpha Strike. It also gains you protection from artifacts in case someone were to try to do something crazy like Fidelkin Shackles to take over it, or it gives you protection from Worm Coil. Gut Shot, which is a 1 damage for basically free spell. Mutagenic Growth, which can be 2 damage on top, but it's a free spell. Again, Slaughter Pact, a free spell. It may not seem like it, but you can either use it to A, kill the opponent's creature, and then win that turn and never have to pay the upkeep, or you can use Slaughter Pact, targeting Nimvagus Elemental, then eat the Slaughter Pact, so it never resolves. You'll never have to pay for that pact, and Nimvagus Elemental will get 2 1+1 counters. Tainted Strike, so that instead of having to get to 20 damage, you can get to 10 damage. It also is lovely in the fact that it's a cheap spell. You can eat it if you want. It's still gonna make your dudes bigger. If you don't want the infects, you can just eat it and get the plus counters on it instead, and it still counts towards the storm count. Your lands are pretty basic here, pretty much just red and black, because that's what it costs to play everything. Even Nimvagus Elemental, while it's a blue and red spell, you're only ever paying black for it, or sorry, red for it. Assault Strobe, because Assault Strobe isn't the best card in the world, but it is damn pretty good. You use it as a way to sort of double down on your damage. So even if you were to get to 10 and you don't have the Tainted Strike, you could Assault Strobe to win. Or if you want to be more greedy, you could Assault Strobe Tainted Strike on a Kiln Fiend, and that's enough to kill right in there. Yeah, because it's 5 and then double strike. So yeah, 3-card combo to win the game on turn 3. Crataxian Probe lets you see their hand, and that's really important to dance around things. Ground Rift is another way to make creatures not be able to block, while at the same time getting a huge storm count off of it allows you to eat it with Nimvagus Elemental and do a ton of damage. And Thoughtseize is the same thing as Crataxian Probe. Allows you to see their hand, but with the difference of you're actually allowed to take something off of it, and it's not for free. So that's basically how it worked. The sideboard included spells that could kill things, things that could dig deeper to try to find the Nimvagus, more Inquisition, more Thoughtseize, more Pyroclasms to stop like really fast combo or really fast aggro, Clout again like as protection, and more Harbingers in case they have more removal. You bring in the Harbingers to do to find more Nimvaguses. This was the old version of the list, and it didn't actually do that well. It did well, don't get me wrong. It's not a bad deck by any stretch of the imagination, but the difference is that it was really weak once they dealt with the Nimvagus. Also, Liliana's making sacks happening was awful. More and more removal entered the format, and it was becoming less and less combo, so it became worse and worse as time went on. The newer update that I prefer to call Elemental Shotgun uses Death's Shadow in order to win the game as well. And you'll see that it has a little bit of a different setup. It has the same sort of spell basis, but it has a little bit different flex spells that it uses. It has totally a different win con, aka Death's Shadow, and it has a completely different mana base, which I think is really, really important. And you'll see a bunch of different features in this deck that I think makes it more versatile and a better, solider deck than Gary T's deck, even though he did all the legwork. I'm not going to take credit for this at all. He did all the legwork, and he's getting pretty much, set the whole standard up for this whole thing. So, in its basis, it still is a aggro combo deck. I don't want to think that it's not, but it is different now. It's not just an all-in combo like Gary T's deck was, where you put out an Nimvagus Elemental, then you do Gut Shot, Mutagenic Growth, Solder Pact, Assault Strobe and Ground Rift, eat all the things, swing for tons of damage, one turn sniper. That's again, like I'm saying, sniper. This is like a sniper deck. This is more of a shotgun deck. It's more into the idea of, and if you check my latest videos out about the Field Guide to Aggro archetypes, I talk about charged. This is a charged deck where it's a charged aggro, where it's trying to do a bunch of spells in order to pump up the guys and swing for a lot of life. But it's more like shotgunning. It's going to be taking chunks of their life total out rather than all of it in one big bang. Now, it still can do a turn 3 win. It still can do a sniper, but it's not nearly as all-in as it used to be. And it's also not just a charged deck. It's also a suicide deck. And the fact that it's giving off different resources, life, hand, creatures, etc., in order to try to have more powerful effects at a cheaper cost, which allows Death Shadows to really work out, because Death Shadow gets -X, X is what your life total is. With this deck, you can brag, saying that you can put out a turn 2 Death Shadow that will be a 1/1 because your life total can be 12 or less. We'll get back to the suicide part of it. Let's just talk about the Kiln Fiend part of it for now. You've got Kiln Fiend Nimvagus Elemental. Same thing as always. 4 Apostle Blessings to use as Alpha Strike as well as Removal Void. You've got 2 Dismember here instead of the Slaughter Packs because it has less life and it still does sort of the same thing. It's still a very cheap card that you can use. 4 Mutagenic Growth, again, as protection from bolts as well as to do finalized damage. Again, we're only viewing it right now in the Nimvagus Kiln Fiend lens. Slaughter Pact is good because, again, like I said, you can target the Nimvagus, eat it, as well as there's a bit more land in this deck, so you are reliably able to cast it and then use its upkeep cost, even though you're probably losing the game at that point. 4 Tainted Strike, because winning the game in a sniper style is awesome. 3 Vines of Vastwood. It's actually a little bit weird that I'm running this, but there's so much removal in Modern right now that the Vines of Vastwood are really vastly important. Haha, look at that pun. It originally was Emerge Unscathed because I liked the rebound effect of it, but then when I flipped more into green instead of white, I decided that Vines of Vastwood was just better value. Mostly you're ever only getting casted for its 1 mana cost, but sometimes you can cast it for its kicker, and it's actually relatively important. Moving right along, we've got 2 Blood Crypt. As your shock lands, it's going to be 2 Blood Crypt, 1 Stomping Ground. And remember that Blood Crypts are swamp mountains, and a Stomping Ground is, in fact, a forest mountain, because the mountain is not important here. It's the forest and the swamp. And that's so that way you can use Verdant Catacombs. Verdant Catacombs is a little weird here, because you're going to be using it to get red, mostly. But it will still grab you a Blood Crypt, it will still grab you a Stomping Ground, and more importantly, it'll grab you a Dryad Arbor. Now, Dryad Arbor was not in the deck used prior, and that was because it's green. Why are you going to use a green spell? Green is not really that important in this deck. But it allows you to grab Dryad Arbor, which means that you can null out a Liliana sack effect. Also, if there's like a Barter in Blood, for example, you can still use the Dryad Arbor out there to null out that. I believe there's also some other ones, not Innocent Blood, but the Devour Flesh, I believe it's called, that you can use Dryad Arbor to get out of. Dryad Arbor also sometimes, very, very, very rarely, is a 1/1 creature that you can use to swing the game in a stall. Or I've used it before in order to put it out there and just start swinging with it, because I was getting under a what do you call it, ensnaring bridge because of it. Really stupid, but sometimes it's actually relevant to have a tutorable creature. And you're only gotten four fetches for it, but it's still relevant because you'll try to hold on to those fetches rather than waste them, unless you're not against a rock deck, in which case just go nuts and try to lower your life total. But the big thing here that's recently come out is 4 City of Brass, 4 mana Conflux. These spells are really good. Before these spells came out, I was using Sulfuric Springs a little bit to try to get my life total down a little bit lower, but then as soon as this got printed, it was fantastic. Having access to 4 City of Brass, or sorry, 8 City of Brass, allows you to have, realistically, be able to cast off Vines of Vastwood, Slaughter Pact, or not Slaughter Pact, Tainted Strike, and red spells as well as white spells whenever you want. We really are a 4-color deck. And you can use these to get around sort of the weird casting costs of Quitaxian Probes and things like that if you need to. But the most important thing about these is that it allows you to lower your life total without actually lowering your guard. You'll see what I'm showing you. You'll see what I'm saying when I actually get to a game. But at the opponent's end step, you can tap a City of Brass, float a green mana for Vines of Vastwood, and then if they're like, oh, he's tapped his Thud, I'm going to go ahead and bolt it now. You still have the floating green mana to actually Vines of Vastwood and be like, no, ain't happening. Vines of Vastwood also rarely good in this deck because it can stop Infect dudes from getting pumped huge, and can also stop Twin, just random side note. But being able to end of turn lower your life total by 1, 2, 3 damage and really start pulling out this Death's Shadow plan is really cool. Assault Strobe is another card that's better here. You see I pump it up to a 2 of. Why do I pump it up to a 2 of? Well, or 3 of is because I have 4 Apostle's Blessings, 3 Vines of Vastwood, so reliably I can get this off now and just back it up with some protection. Not to mention, even if they think, yeah, I've got nothing else, if I put out a Death's Shadow and it's a 5/5, double striking a Death's Shadow, that's a 5/5, is huge. It's amazing. So it's just, even for value, just small value, it can be just used on its own to win the game. Quitaxian Probe and Thoughtseize, again, allows me to view their hand and sort of get around things. Moving off to the sideboard, you'll see that I've got a pretty much more simplified sideboard now that I've got a lot of things going on in my main deck. I don't need to worry about covering it. One of the things that I don't worry about covering is protection. So you're going to see no Cloud of the Demosis or Lightning Greaves, because I've got 4 Apostle's Blessing, 3 Vines of Vastwood, allowing me for 7 different spells. That means reliably 1 out of every 10 card will be a protection spell. Not to mention I've got Thoughtseize and Quitaxian Probe, allowing me to see and occasionally remove the spell. So I've got lots of different forms of protection in that aspect. I've got 1 Dismember, 1 Slaughter Pact. They pretty much only go in against the mid-range decks, or the decks that I really need removal. And usually against those decks, I will take out things like Quitaxian Probe or Assault Strobe, because I'm not going to be hitting them like they'll have creatures to block, so it's not necessarily that important. I have 2 Duress that comes in against any combo decks and any decks that run a lot of removals. That's talking about things like Jund. That's also talking about things like American Control and combo decks in general. Pyroclasms come in versus the aggro decks, mostly Affinity, occasionally Zoo if it's the Gruul Zoo deck, or other sort of like tempo decks. There's aggro decks in general. Thoughtseize again comes in just like the Duress does against those combo decks and removal decks. Shattering Spree is kind of a funny addition. You could replace it with Rakdos Charm if you want to also be able to hit the graveyard. I decided to keep the Shattering Spree just as Shattering Spree because it has the replicate cost and can be eaten by Nimvagus Elemental. I believe you can't cast it without a target. Otherwise, it would be even more redundant because you could just use it as more sort of like ground rifts and just eat it with Nimvagus Elemental if it's doing nothing. But so Shattering Spree is really good against Affinity, and it's not the worst thing in the world to side in versus Tron or things. And then the last thing I have is for Leyline of Sanctity. This is against things like Storm, against things like Escape Shift, 8-Rack. This really does a number on 8-Rack, so I'm sorry, 8-Rack does a number on us, so we've got to side in accordingly. The weird stuff like Mill as well. I actually have 4 Ground Rift in the deck. I said I had 3, it was just the accidental flick of the keyboard, and I doubted myself for half a second. I totally have 4 Ground Rift, because it's really good to basically just say that you can't block. I think I made sure, I did go down to 3 Ground Rift for a little bit while I still had the Emerged Unscathed, because I could use that as a creatures can't block this because it's got protection. But then I went back up to 4 when I switched over to Vines of Vastwood. So without any further ado, let's get to a game. So in game 2 of this one, the game 1 wasn't particularly interesting, so I didn't record it, or just deleted it. But this one might be interesting, as it seems like we are going to have ourselves a way to just win off of nothing in particular. I could very realistically get my life down to 17 and then 2 more down to 15 and then do this down to 13, which is not enough for me to do a turn 2 Death's Shadow. So it's still going to be a turn 3 Death's Shadow. You do have to think ahead of time sometimes math-wise with Death's Shadow. So it would probably just be more relevant for me just to put out the Stomping Ground here. And since I've got a backup plan with Death Shadows, I don't mind running out my Kiln Fiend turn 2. So I'm not going to use my Crataxian Probe yet. Let's see what we get. Some Vivid Lands. So I'm playing a really weird Zumbra deck or something. I doubt it's really going to be competitive at all. But yeah, so when this guy dies, he deals 1 damage to me, I think. Right now, at least. He can deal more. Pulse Blessing's great draw. I'm still going to hold on to this for a second. Just because that means I can still get myself, if there's some weird Liliana, he's still very much black. I can still get myself a way to dodge dodge a sack ability with the with what I need to. But I'm still able to get black if I need to with blood, like for Blood Crypt, in order to put out Death Shadows and do some Tainted Strikes. If there's nothing stopping me, I can put out a Death Shadow, attack with the Kiln Fiend, and the I guess also I can just do 2 Tainted Strikes, right? And that'll be 4. It'll be 4, 7, 8, 9, and a Taxian Probe just to win off the game. That seems totally fine. Doing a little bit more slow roll with the Death Shadow. There's no reason for me to like run it out there right now, especially when I have a win con with this. I think it can actually just win the game currently, unless he's got something that's not red in his hand, in which case it blows me out of the water. So what we're going to do here is we're actually just going to look into his hand, see if he can do anything with this Ether Vial. He cannot. Okay, so we just got the win here then. So this makes him a 3/2 plus his giant growths. So that gives him pro red. That's 12 plus 13, so that's going to be 15 a ton. 15-2. Infects. Because, you know, sometimes you just want to have a turn 3 win where you attack for 15 infect, and that's it. GG. Let's get a different game out here. I'm trying to think how greedy I am. I can relatively get down to 17 life. That's not enough to cast a Death Shadow. I'm going to mull it. This is a much better hand. Much, much better. I can see what's going on. I got 2 mana. I got a Nimvagus to check. I've got a Dismember. Yeah, we'll keep this. I'm not going first, which kind of blows. I like going first because that allows more turn 3 wins. But let's see what we draw here. Assault Strobe, which is pretty good. I'm guessing this is going to be a turn 3 win, and he's already got white out, so he might have Path to Exile. So actually, before I do that, I'm going to see what's in his hand. Just take a peek in his hand. See if he's got the Path to Exile or something that I need to play around. He does not. He has a wall of Reverence, which gains him 6 life a turn, which is gross. So he's a Summoning Trap deck, which is fine. I'm never going to counter any of his spells, so he's going to have to ramp up there. Get ourselves a land, which is kind of cool. For future reference, when you're going to Jaxian Probe, don't put out a land. Like, wait for it. Not that it really matters much to me. But I've got an Nimvagus Elemental. He can't cast that until turn 3, and we're looking at being able to do a ton of damage to him here. City of Brass, not what I wanted to draw. I wanted to draw more spells. But this will work for now. I think the coast is clear. I didn't see him have a Path to Exile, so I'm going to play these and have him eat these guys. And swing for 5. I think the coast is clear at any rate. Like I thought. Okay, cool. So if we draw any form of spell, I can get 2/2, making him a 7/7, 7/8, allowing me to do more. And I can Assault Strobe him down to like 1, which I think I'm gonna do here while I still have the chance. I'm going to put this out into play, and I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to go ahead and Mutagenic Girth to eat this and become a 7/8. Tap this, lose 1 life, and Assault Strobe it, and then swing for 14. There we go. Bring him down to 1 life. I'm not running Gut Shot in this build at all, so I'm not going to kill him off of it. But this does allow me to get a fetch, crack it for a Dryad Arbor, swing for the win if I have to. And it also does mean that he's got to, like, if he casts the Wall of Reverence, it means he's got to block with it. He's still going to gain some life off of it, but that's fine. At the beginning of your end step. equal to power of target creature you control. Oh, power, so it's not like he's going to be gaining 6. That's actually way, way, way more relevant. And he's got to block it, so it's going to kill him. Summoning Trap costs, what, 6? So he's still a little bit away. He's still at least 2 turns away from Summoning Trapping. Wall of Omen's not a bad draw here. Hopeful that I can get something that gives it pro white. Ground Rift, also a good idea. Ground Rift wouldn't have worked there, but it would work here. Cryptaxian Probe is at least a draw spell. So we get to see what's in his hand. He's got a Tooth and Nail, which I believe he can't cast yet. Yeah, I totally can't cast it. Draw, we got a Ground Rift here. Perfect. Ground Rift. Swing for the win. And we'll unlock our sideboard. Seems fun. Seems fine. I think it's more important to duress and Thoughtseize early than it is to kill his creatures with the Slaughter Pact and stuff. He may have blockers, but the blockers are going to have to block or die. And I think he's got less targeted removal, so I need these Vines of Asphodel a lot less in this matchup. And we have a turn 2 win here, or turn 3 win here if we get our land, which we should off of Cryptaxian Probe, so I'm going to keep it. If not, that just happens, variance. Alright, we ended up getting a land just as we hoped. So I'm going to go ahead and just put down... I don't have a Death Shadow in my hand. I don't think I really care too much about my life total, so I'm just going to put down the Mana Conflicts. Just because if I get another mana, it means that I can do things like Ground Rift. Having 3 would be kind of cool, so I don't want to thin down my deck with just this fetch. I don't necessarily mind if he blocks anyways, because it means that I can still kill his stuff. It's relevant. Okay, so now we have a Nimvagus, who's better here than Kiln Fiend. So I'm going to pay for the Nimvagus. And hopefully I'll be able to swing with some Infect instant speed on something that he doesn't block, and I'll win the game. Or if he just doesn't block both, I can actually just Infect them both up. Sure, Wall of Roots. So he's access to a lot of mana. We're going to take this for a Blood Crypt, because I sided out all my, whatever you call them. Sided out my Vines of Vastwoods. I'm just going to take a full life. It doesn't really mean I'm going to do anything with it. I'm just going to take it. Cedar Brass is good here. That means that allows me to do a lot of cool stuff. I also think it means I can just Tainted Strike win. So I'm going to Taxian Probe and not eat it. So that way I can see if he's got a path, and he does not have a path. This means my Storm count goes up. Eat it. Also means that we can now Tainted Strike here. Making him a 2/2. Well, plus the 1/1 counters. Then we'll Tainted Strike here and have him eat it. And then Ground Rift here with several copies. And we'll use 2 of the copies to make it so that I can't block. And then we'll eat the other 2. So that's going to set our counters to 8, making him a 10, 10. With Infect, we swing and they can't block. And that's the end of the game. None of those guys have flying, so we don't really need to worry about it. He's just basically dead. I think he's got to realize it. Alright, so the last game I wanted to show off was Death's Shadow and how that's useful against certain decks, and how it can be a really strong backup plan just to blow up out of nowhere. And this was a good one that I found. It's kind of hard to get videos of just Death's Shadow doing his work, since he is a backup plan, and it's like, well, the backup plan needs to work, and I also need to be on plan B. So it's a little bit more iffy than just winning turn 3 like I was doing with most of my Kiln Fiend stuffs. So I'm playing against this weird sort of affinity. I think it's like a budget infinity, and he basically empties out his hands. I know I'm basically, this is game 2. I know that what I'm up against, and that's I'm gonna be taking a lot of damage. So I decided that I'm gonna be able to win with this Death's Shadow. I just need to be very, very careful about how I go about it. Now, if I had managed to get like a red mana, or not a red mana, a black mana here instead of this Stomping Ground, then I probably would have been able to win very easily with just putting out 2 Death Shadows and just attacking doubly for the win. But I knew I was going to be taking a lot of damage. And again, I do. It's just like Affinity, it's Explosion. I'm going to be taking that much damage, which is why I was careful with my life total to make sure that I was taking as little life on my own as possible, because I'm just going to let him do most of the work for me. I end up Pyroclasming, which I think hits him by surprise. It gets rid of a lot of his stuff. And I know that I've still got an advantage here. He might have been holding back, expecting me to do something like Pyroclasming. But the Volt Scourge is going to be a little annoying, but I'm going to be able to get around it pretty easily. You can see I'm at 8 now, and then I take 1 more damage off of the mana Conflux, and I'm going to be at 7, and I'm going to have to Death Shadows here. So Death Shadow is going to be pretty big. It's going to be, I believe, a 6/6 due to the life. And I'm already basically saying I'm threatening you with lethal. I've got an Assault Strobe in my hand. If I ever get a Tainted Strike or something, I can basically lethal them out. If I had managed to get 2 of them, it would have been like gross city. So he's going to leave something back to block with. And he's also going to be attacking with the Volt Scourge, bringing me down 2 life. So that's going to drop me off at 5. Again, this whole game I was very careful with my life. It's being Suicide black, or Suicide deck in general, does not mean that you should just be willy-nilly tossing your entire life out. You should actually have a game plan of know that if I do this much of my own life, he's going to hit me for this much, and it's going to bring me down to this much, because you're going to get down to the wire games like this one's going to be. I'm at 8/8 now. Here's the lovely thing. I can go ahead and Mutagenetic Growth here for free if I wanted to. I'd prefer to just do what I was doing by this point, which is Apostle's Blessing. Little known mode about Apostle's Blessing is you can give target artifact or creature you control protection from a color till end of turn, but you can also give it protection from artifacts, which is exactly what I'm going to do here. Ink Moth Nexus, when it transforms, is not a colorless creature. He is, in fact, an artifact creature. Death's Shadow is now an 11/11, double striked, and that's going to be game. And a Rage Quit from him. So, in a nutshell, that's the way you should go about running this kind of deck. It is a very, very, very fun deck to play, and actually very competitive too. It's not like it's not. The deck is in itself is, I don't think, that expensive. I believe Nimvagus is worth about $2 a pop. Kiln Fiend, I believe, is worth about 25 cents a pop. Dryad Arbor, depending on the one that you get. I have the From the Vaults one because it's so damn pretty. But you can get a normal one, and that's like, I think, $5 maybe. Death Shadow is like $1 rare. It's always been really good. It's always been this casual thing. I think it's actually closer to $4 now. So I would go ahead and grab them if you can early. It's not like they're a bad investment ever. Apostle's Blessing cheap. Dismember's cheap. I believe Dismember's only $1. Mutagenic Growth cheap. Slaughter Pact is a little bit more expensive. Slaughter Pact's about $4. Currently in this video, Tainted Strike cheap. Vines of Vaster cheap. Assault Strobe worth nothing. Gritaxian Probe nothing. Ground Rift worth nothing. Thought Seizes, if you're getting the Theros Thought Seizes, they're currently worth about $14 a pop. If you wait until Theros rotates out and you don't have that much longer to wait, then you're looking at well, you do have a little bit longer to wait, excuse me. You got about a year to wait. But I think those things are going to go down to about $5 once they roll out, and then we'll start gaining value again. I have the ones that are from Lorwyn, which I just recently traded for because the art is so pretty, and those are worth a bit more. The things that start being worth a little bit more money are your City of Brasses, which are worth $4 a pop. Mana Convulsion, that one, City of Brass 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mana Confluxin. That one is worth currently about $10. That price is incredibly inflated right now because of Standard. If it's not in Standard, I can only assume it goes down to the same amount City of Brasses, so about $4, maybe less, because it's opened a lot. And then you get your Stomping Ground, your Blood Crypts, which are worth $10 a pop, and then the Verdant Catacombs, which I think are worth $25 a pop, because these are the most reprinted fetch lands in ever. So the Verdant Catacombs are a little bit less expensive, so it makes it better than things like Misty Rainforest or, what do you call it, Scalding Tarn or Arid Mesa, which I think are all worth more than Verdant Catacombs. So the mana base is definitely not cheap. The mana base is what makes this deck worth, I think, something. I think this entire deck might be worth around $150 because of the mana base. If you manage to have the mana base like I did with Zoo, just in general, like I had it for, with the exception of this guy, then it's incredibly cheap. The whole deck will only cost you maybe at $50 tops. So, that's an Nimvegas Elemental combo, or again, as I like to call it, Elemental Shotgun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want, like the video, subscribe to it. If you want any more information about this archetype, go ahead onto the link provided below. It's going to take you right to the primer. You can talk to some other guys about it on MTG Salvation if you want to. Thanks for watching, guys.